Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all for coming. Apologies for starting a little bit late, but we do understand there were some traffic issues in the Durban area, so hopefully a few other people, I know there are a few other people still on their way, but we thought we'd make a start. So it's a great pleasure for CASAC to bring this Kader Asmal Lecture to Durban for the first time. We've been running this lecture series since 2013, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment, but we felt it was important that we bring the lecture to KwaZulu-Natal, given that this is the home province of the late Professor Kader Asmal, who I'm sure many of you will know all about. But the reason we've instituted this lecture series, CASAC, which as you may know is the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, to give it its full name, has been in existence since 2010, working in the fields of public accountability, constitutionalism, the rule of law, and strengthening of institutions of governance within our democratic dispensation. Now, Kader Asmal was a key figure behind the establishment of CASAC in 2010. He was one of those foresighted people who saw the need for an organization of this nature to help strengthen the foundations of constitutional democracy in South Africa. Unfortunately, Kader passed on shortly after CASAC's formation. He passed on in 2011, and the council then decided that in order to honor the legacy of Kader, we would institute this lecture series in his honor, and we have done so, as I say, since 2013, primarily moving it between Cape Town and Johannesburg, but felt that it was about time that we broadened the geographic spread of this important lecture series. Allied to the Kader Asmal Lecture, and as part of the honoring of the legacy of Kader, we've also instituted a scholarship program at Kader's, one of Kader's alma maters, Trinity College Dublin, where he served as Dean of the Faculty of Law for many, many years. As many of you may know, Kader lived in Ireland for 27 years. In fact, this very same year as Valli that Mandela was in prison, from 1963 to 1990. And Kader is as well known in Dublin as he is in South Africa. So we instituted the scholarship program whereby we send one law graduate each year to do the Masters in International and Comparative Law at Trinity, one of the leading international law courses in the world. And we've been very fortunate to have had the support of the Irish Embassy in South Africa in that program, as well as support from Trinity College in Dublin itself. And I think that really speaks to the legacy of Kader, in that his heart was as much in South Africa as it was in Ireland. And he, as I say, made a huge impact, not just at an academic level in Ireland, but at an activist level and at the level of someone who was active in public life. One of the things that Kader did there was he was one of the people that helped set up the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, an organization that is still going strong today. So one can see why when he was in South Africa, he was also one of the people that was very much behind the establishment of CASAC as well. As I say, the importance of bringing this lecture here to Durban is to honor the fact that Kader is was from KwaZulu-Natal. He grew up in KwaDukuza, and he often tells the story that his real political awakening came about as a result of the many interactions that he had with Chief Albert Luthuli, just down the road in Groutville, who was a regular visitor to bookshops in KwaDukuza, as well as to Kader's father's little grocery store. So, that link to KwaDukuza, to Chief Albert Luthuli, which ultimately led Kader into the African National Congress, that was his political home for many, many years. So it's with great pleasure that we bring this lecture to Durban this year, hopefully not for the last time, but to engage with the community that I'm sure Kader would be pleased for us to do. It would not have been possible for us to organize this event here today without the remarkable assistance of the Democracy Development Program, who've really done all of the hard work in putting this event together on our behalf. And I really would like to ask a representative of the Democracy Development Program, Ms. Suraksha Singh, to come forward and give us a few words of welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to partner with CASAC as we present the Kader Asmal Lecture, a moment to remember a life devoted to justice, public service, and deep democratic conviction. Kader Asmal taught us that democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a responsibility that requires knowledge, courage, and a collective action. Dialogues and lectures like this are not just words on a stage. They sharpen our ideas, expose us to new perspectives, and build the civic muscle that we need to confront inequality, corruption, and apathy. They conscientize citizens, young and old, about the duties that accompany our rights and the shared work of safeguarding our Constitution. As we reflect on the challenges before us, let this lecture be a catalyst to listen actively, to question respectfully, and to hold power to account. Let it remind us that every civic gesture, voting, volunteering, speaking out, or mentoring the next generation fortifies our democracy. So I invite you, engage fully in today's conversation. Take what you learn back into your communities and commit to daily acts of citizenship. Defend our democracy not only in crisis, but in the steady, persistent work of building a fairer and more inclusive South Africa for all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Suraksha. And I think, those words echo the spirit of civil society in South Africa, constantly engaged, constantly, speaking about issues, getting people together to discuss the issues that we need to confront. And I think organizations like DDP are critically important. We're now going to move on to get to the speaker, but I'm going to ask a colleague of mine who's a member of the CASAC Council and a recently appointed member of the CASAC Executive Committee, Dr. Thandi Matthews.
Thank you so much, Lawson, for that warm introduction. Good evening, colleagues, friends. My name is Dr. Thandi Matthews, and I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening, former Minister Valli Moosa, a veteran of the South African freedom struggle. For us who may have benefited from the past 3 decades of South Africa's democracy, we tend to forget that our liberation struggle was largely shaped and led by our country's youth. Minister Moosa was politically conscientized at just 14 years old through various defiance campaigns and served as an executive member of the then banned South African Students' Organization, popularly known as SASO. He was a founding member of the United Democratic Front in 1983, serving on its national committee and as General Secretary between 1985 to 1989. His committed activism in the quest for a non-racial democratic South Africa led him to serving lengthy periods in solitary confinement and detention without trial. Working across all 4 pillars of the liberation struggle, and most notably the mass democratic movement and international solidarity, he played a pivotal role in creating international awareness through the media about the plight of detainees in South Africa. He later worked closely with Tata Madiba as a senior ANC negotiator during the transition of South Africa's democratic political settlement and participated in drafting our constitution. Subsequently, he served under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela as Minister of Constitutional Development in South Africa's first democratic administration, and thereafter as Minister of the Environment and Tourism under the leadership of President Thabo Mbeki. He has since extended his expertise in various leadership roles in the public, private, and non-governmental sectors. He's also a keen hiker and lover of classical music. Currently, as global citizens, we are enduring the wave of right-wing populism and democratic backsliding submerging the global north and south, alongside the weaponization of the rule of law as politics by other means to sustain the continued marginalization, oppression, and occupation of the global majority. Indeed, the rule of law that governs the regime of liberal internationalism is frequently criticized as an institution to serve elite interests and sustain unequal relations of power against the historically oppressed, preventing victims of colonialism, apartheid, and genocide from acquiring justice and accountability. As a global human rights norm entrepreneur, South Africa continues to draw on its constitutional framework as a crucial mechanism of counterpower in the quest to advance substantive equality and social justice in the international governance regime. In this context, I look forward to hearing Minister Moosa's thoughts on tackling the challenges facing constitutionalism and democracy in South Africa and globally. Thank you.
Mr. Lawson Naidu, leadership of the DDP, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everybody. It is, there's two things that make this event special for me. The one is the association that I had with Professor Kader Asmal. We worked very, very closely together for a number of years. And we were good friends and good comrades. And as you know, that comrades generally disagree with each other on more things than they agree with each other on, but not so between Kader and I. We generally agreed with each other on almost everything, especially as regards the Constitution and the Constitution making. The other thing that makes it special for me is that I studied in this town. My student years were spent here. When I matriculated in 1974 in Johannesburg, the Wits University was a white university and they were not allowed to take me in. They said, sorry, we like you, but the law says we can't take you in. You should go to the university that has been set aside for your designated group, which was the University of Durban, Westville. And I was very unhappy about it, but in the end it was one of the best things that could have happened to me. Spending a number of years in this city, but also a lot of my political shaping happened at the University of Durban, Westville. I spend a fair amount of my time now talking about the Constitution, especially doing constitutional literacy and constitutional education, because one of the things that, as you know, I'm a pensioner, and one of the not-for-profit things I do is I chair an organization called We the People, which is an organization that does literacy work in schools, etc., about our Constitution. Allow me to start off my lecture by reading the preamble of the Constitution, and that's simply because I think it cannot be read enough times. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for the democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people, and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. May God protect our people. Nkosi sikalele I Afrika. Morena buluka sichaba saheso. God seën Suid-Afrika. God bless South Africa. Mutsimu fatuchetsa Afrika. Hosi katekisa Afrika. With these opening words, the adoption of the Constitution in 1996 marked the end of the long nightmare of apartheid and colonialism. It marked the end of white supremacy and of black humiliation. But who would have imagined that an entire generation after the momentous adoption of the democratic Constitution, there would be a small group of men, both black and white, who would unashamedly campaign against equal rights and fundamental freedoms. This is the subject of my talk today, in honor of that great South African law professor and freedom fighter, Kader Asmal. As I speak purely in my personal capacity, I can say it as it is and call it by its name. On the one hand, there are those who rubbish the Constitution by making the claim that the Constitution is Eurocentric, that it was drafted by whites, or that it was secretly drafted by imperialists in Washington and imposed upon us. On the other hand, there are those who rubbish the Constitution by claiming that our Constitution promotes white genocide, is a blueprint for socialism, and that the Bill of Rights is woke. It is also tempting to simply dismiss these views by saying, take it from whence it comes. Of course, from whence it comes is not unimportant, but let me deal with the actual substance. Our Constitution is no accident of history. It is the product of a glorious freedom struggle against apartheid, that crime against humanity, and it is a product of a vision for an enlightened future. It was drafted by 490 democratically elected members of the Constitutional Assembly over a 2-year period from 1994 to 1996. The very composition of the Assembly was a representation of South African society in all its diversity. It was an intergenerational group of people composed of members from their 20s and some right up to their 80s. There were trade union officials and shop stewards from the mines and across industries. There were business owners, there were school teachers, domestic workers, lawyers and medical doctors. There were former SADF, South African Defence Force generals, and former Mkonto Wesizwe combatants. There were traditional leaders, Christian priests, Muslim imams, and other religious leaders. There were recently returned exiles, and there were activists of the United Democratic Front. There were writers, poets, and musicians. They came from the ANC, the PAC, the South African Communist Party, the National Party, the Democratic Party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Freedom Front, and a range of other small parties. And they came from every corner of urban and rural South Africa. When you look at this body of people, you knew that you were looking at South Africa. On 27 April 1994, 20 million voters granted the 490 members of the Constitutional Assembly the sovereign mandate to draft and adopt a constitution for the free South Africa. Notwithstanding the fact that the Constitutional Assembly had a democratic mandate to draft and adopt a new constitution, it decided to go beyond the call of duty by doing everything humanly possible to actively involve the people as a whole in the drafting process. The public consultation process that followed stands out as a monument in itself. Its extent, scale, and reach has no equal in the pre- or post-apartheid South Africa. It is also safe to say that no other constitution anywhere else in the world is a product of such extensive public consultation and active participation of the citizenry. The first step was to hold all meetings of the Constitutional Assembly and its myriad of subcommittees in full public view. None of the debates and discussions were held behind closed doors. All the proceedings were extensively reported in the media. The mantra was, the Constitution should not be drafted behind the backs or above the heads of the people. Members of the Constitutional Assembly also travelled the length and breadth of the country, holding public consultation meetings. The proceedings of each such consultation are on record. Widely publicized calls in all languages were made, requesting the public to submit their views to the Assembly. A staggering 1,753,424 written and voice submissions were received. By the way, when I studied at UDW, I graduated in pure mathematics. I can read numbers. Let me read that number to you again. I'm not making a mistake. It's 1,753,424 written and voice submissions were received. For those who didn't want to write in their views, there was a call line. They could call in and say, we want this, or we want that, or we don't want this. Between the years 1994 and 1996, the general public was intimately engaged in the constitution-making process. And when the new constitution was finally voted upon, it was supported by an overwhelming majority in the Constitutional Assembly. And as a matter of interest, only 2 out of the 490 members voted against the adoption. This was less than 0.5% of the Assembly. The Constitution was genuinely the making of the South African nation. The very first provision of the Constitution says the following: the Republic of South Africa is one sovereign, democratic state founded on the following values: human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights and freedoms, non-racialism and non-sexism, supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law, universal adult suffrage, a national common voters' roll, regular elections, and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. On the occasion of the adoption of the Constitution in the Constitutional Assembly, the then leader of the majority party in the Constitutional Assembly, President Thabo Mbeki, said the following. He was, of course, deputy president at the time. Just as a historical thing, the president, who was Nelson Mandela, had to resign from Parliament in terms of the separation of powers. So although he sat into the proceedings of the Constitutional Assembly, he didn't have the vote. And so the most senior person would have been the deputy president, who was Thabo Mbeki. And he spoke on behalf of the majority party on the occasion of the adoption in his famous I'm an African speech. But I'd like to quote the following passage from his speech. The Constitution whose adoption we celebrate constitute an unequivocal statement that we refuse to accept that our Africanness shall be defined by our race, color, gender, or historical origins. It is a firm assertion made by ourselves that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. It gives concrete expression to the sentiment we share as Africans and will defend to death that the people shall govern. It recognizes the fact that the dignity of the individual is both an objective which society must pursue and is a goal which cannot be separated from the material well-being of that individual. It seeks to create the situation in which all our people shall be free from fear, including the fear of the oppression of one national group by another, the fear of the disempowerment of one social echelon by another, the fear of the use of state power to deny anybody their fundamental human rights, and the fear of tyranny. It aims to open the door so that those who are disadvantaged can assume their place in society as equals and with their fellow human beings without regard to color, race, gender, age, or geographic dispersal. It provides the opportunity to enable each one and all to state their views, promote them, strive for their implementation in the process of governance without fear that a contrary view will be met with repression. It creates a law-governed society which shall be inimical to arbitrary rule. It enables the resolution of conflicts by peaceful means rather than resort to force. It rejoices in the diversity of our people and creates the space for all of us voluntarily to define ourselves as one people. As an African, this is an achievement of which I am proud. Proud without reservation and proud without any feeling of conceit. Our sense of elevation at this moment also derives from the fact that this magnificent product is the unique creation of African hands and African minds, unquote. How is it that a small number of people today are doing everything to question the legitimacy of the Constitution? Anyone who knows the history of our Constitution will find this very perplexing. Is it really out of genuine ignorance of how and who made the Constitution? They answer this question themselves when they rubbish the very fundamentals of the Constitution. So let's say it like it is. These anti-democrats are backward reactionaries who are opposed to the fundamental democratic values contained in our Constitution. They are opposed to political and social progress. They yearn for a nostalgic past in which the common man and woman is denied freedom. Without looking too hard, one can see many common characteristics of these anti-democrats, even though some of them may be white South Africans and some of them may be black South Africans. Yes, let's look at it for what it is. Many of those rubbishing the constitutions are the very ones who have been found guilty of wrongdoing, or stand accused of wrongdoing, or work as paid legal advisors to wrongdoing. This is hardly, or work as paid legal advisors to wrongdoers. This is hardly a coincidence. They also resort to reviving the demon of tribalism, and they openly yearn for a return to patriarchy. And then there are those who just happen to be the very ones who openly praise apartheid, promote religious intolerance, and promote naked white supremacy. 2025 will go down in history as a year in which white supremacists in South Africa, the US, the UK, Europe, and elsewhere abandon all sense of shame and walk out of the shadows to spit bile on anyone who is not white. Could it be that after centuries of a world ruled by white men through slavery, colonialism, and apartheid, the short 5 or 6 decades since the civil rights movement in the US, the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the feminist movement, and the rebellion against the sharing of wealth and power with others, with women and with people of color? Their brazenness takes one's breath away. In thinly veiled racism, they talk about the Western way of life being under threat. Of course, meaning that white monopoly of privilege and power is under threat. We are fortunate that in South Africa, this is not a generalized sentiment amongst whites. The few who promote white supremacism are regarded as an embarrassment. By the way, they enjoy free speech here. In America, which they consider to be heaven on earth, it is now a crime there to speak out against fascism. Let us be unambiguous. Diversity, inclusiveness, openness, and tolerance are fundamental to what the free South Africa is about, not just a nice to have. It is deeply offensive for anybody to rubbish these values, especially if it is done by supremacists. South Africans, both black and white, fought long and hard for the achievement of a sovereign republic. Is it a wonder that the same supremacists are calling on the US to impose imperial power over South Africa? They are obviously impressed that in the US, freedom-loving journalists, academics, judges, and civil servants are being persecuted. They are, in fact, calling for the recolonization of South Africa. The idea of a sovereign republic only makes sense to them if it is controlled by a white minority regime. Both these white and black anti-democrats make extensive use of social media. That's the other thing they have in common. They make extensive use of social media and the glib one-liners that this medium lends itself to. Both these groups rely heavily on podcasts, a medium through which fact-checking does not apply, and a medium in which the one-sided point of view is revered. It is interesting that in style, both resort to incendiary language, hyperbole, and profanities. They both resort to ethnic mobilization, a common refuge for scoundrels. Ethics, compassion, and fundamental human rights are alien to their discourse. Let's look briefly at some of their arguments against the Constitution. The anti-democrats say that the Constitution is what they call woke. By this they mean that the Constitution prohibits, without equivocation, the promotion of racism, that it promotes tolerance and compassion, that it prohibits discrimination on the grounds of race or gender or religion or sexual orientation, that it says a woman is first and foremost a full human being. They also don't like religious freedom. The constitutional right to freely practice one's religion is far too woke for them. Then the anti-democrats say that the Constitution discriminates against white males and or promotes white genocide. This is frankly nothing more than a desperate yearning for the days when every privilege was reserved by white men for white men. Their real gripe against the opening of the doors of learning, of the corridors of power, the professions, and the economy to women and blacks. The Constitution requires of the state to correct the imbalances of the past, that those who were trampled upon for centuries are given the opportunity to study, to work, and live a life of dignity. The anti-democrats are really asking for white privilege and black disadvantage to be frozen in time. Now, if this Constitution is anti-white in any way, it would not have been the case that more than a generation after freedom, the standard of living of white males is miles ahead of any other group in society. As mentioned by Rob Rose and Monica Mark in the Financial Times dated 18th October 2025, last week, quote, households headed by white South Africans earn on average more than 4 times the income of black households, according to Statistics South Africa. An unemployment rate of 37% for black households falls to 8% for their white peers. The actual data speaks for itself. Then the anti-democratic say that the Constitution was drafted in Washington or some other imperial capital and imposed upon us. We are fortunate that the South African Constitution was drafted in the modern electronic era. As a result, every step of its drafting is available in video and audio footage for anybody who cares to see. The utterly false claim is nothing but a deliberate attempt by those who act lawfully and those who are apologists for wrongdoers to legitimize their contemptuous behavior. Then the anti-democratic say that the Constitution is Eurocentric and that it is un-African. An extension of this argument would be that the struggle for one person, one vote was un-African, that the struggle for a living wage is un-African, that the long struggle of South African women for equal rights is un-African. One is reminded of the claim by the apartheid oppressors in those days that the freedom struggle for the overthrow of apartheid and equal rights was the work of Soviet-inspired communists, that these were really un-African ideals. Now we are told that the equal rights and freedoms that form the backbone of the Constitution is being imposed on us by others. Then the Democrats say that the Constitution grants too much power to an unelected judiciary. Our Constitution grants Parliament the right to make laws that governs us, but not the right to take away our freedoms. What's difficult to understand about that? Yes, an elected Parliament is free to rule, but not free to oppress us. Parliament should not be able to scrap, for example, regular elections, free speech, religious freedom, equal rights for workers, etc. In any case, it is not uncommon for scoundrels and anti-democrats all over the world to rubbish the judges and courts that stops them from wrongdoing. By the way, our judges do not appoint themselves. They are appointed by the Judicial Service Commission, which is essentially controlled by Parliament. Then the anti-democrats say that the Constitution does not allow for the redistribution of land. Show me the evidence, please. The Constitution not only allows for land redistribution, it requires government to do it. There is no evidence that the slow pace of land redistribution is a result of the property clause in the Bill of Rights. In any event, the fundamental essence of our Constitution does not stand or fall by any particular formulation of the property clause, or the property clause itself for that matter. The Constitution itself allows for an amendment to the property clause or any other clause, provided this is supported by an overwhelming majority of South Africans. There is no demonstrable evidence that the overwhelming majority of South Africans would like the property clause to be repealed. And of course, as strange is the false claim by white anti-democrats that the Constitution allows for farms to be unjustly appropriated. Then there is, I'm not going to take much longer, then there is the constant false claim that there are serious so-called compromises in the Constitution called sunset clauses, and that this is what is holding us back. Now, please show me the sunset clauses. Where are they? There are none. There were sunset clauses in terms of which the Government of National Unity operated from 1994 to 1996. The sun on these clauses have long set. They no longer exist. May I say in conclusion that the Constitution serves as a mirror we use to judge ourselves. It is the standard we expect those in political and economic power to respect. It is the ultimate weapon of the poor, the weak, and the disadvantaged. And it is the window through which the nation looks at the future we want. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Valli. I think the message that has been delivered could not be more timely, not just within South Africa, but as Valli pointed out, the global headwinds we face with right-wing populism on the rise, denying the very fundamentals of democratic norms and values. This is something that we need to collectively address. And it's been a theme of CASAC's work over recent times that we need to openly confront these denialists of constitutional democracy, of the rights of freedom for all of the people of South Africa and indeed of the world. And debunking the myths that are spread and the lies that are spread by the anti-constitutionalists who would like to see us revert to a system of parliamentary sovereignty in some cases. And we've seen the devastation that that caused in South Africa in the past. So this is a debate and a conversation that needs to continue. It's one that CASAC is committed to doing, and in fact, in just over a month's time, we will be hosting a conference in Johannesburg, addressing and looking back critically at, after 30 years, on the Constitution that we are so proud of. And I think as Valli has so aptly described, that the spirit with which the Constitution was molded, it wasn't just 490 people, but it was 490 people listening to millions of South Africans and their views and aspirations for a new South Africa. I'd like now to belatedly welcome in their presence members of the Asmal family that are here, Kader's son Adam and his partner Leanne, Kader's granddaughter Zoe and her partner Jessie. I know you dashed very quickly from the airport, but thank you very, very much for being here this evening. It really adds a lot of spirit to this lecture series, and I know you've been at many of them in the past, and we're certainly very grateful to have you here with us this evening. We're going to close shortly, but I do want to say to people, there will be some refreshments and snacks served in the room right adjacent to us here. So please stay around and we will continue the conversation over those refreshments so that we can begin to make the connections with the message that has been delivered and begin to work out what it is we need to do collectively as South Africans in order to strengthen the foundations of the constitutional democracy that we have enjoyed for the past 30 years. I'm going to ask in closing for the chair of CASAC, Dr. Russell Ali, to come forward and give us a few final words this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawson, and thank you, Valli, for a tour de force. I just want to, it was just so timely, and there just a couple of things in your speech that I just want to reinforce because they were so powerful. First, that constitutionalism is the bedrock of our democracy, and that the South African Constitution is based on that deep appreciation of constitutionalism. Our Constitution reflects the inclusivity, the openness, the transparency, the participation, and also very important that it's values-based. The values of dignity, freedom, equality. But I think the most powerful message really was the fact of the sovereignty of the Constitution. But that sovereignty actually derives from the sovereignty of the will of the people. And I think that's really the clarion call that the challenge that we've been given. So thank you very much. I think it was so appropriate and so timely, and so much in the spirit of what Kader Asmal stood for. I want to thank the Democracy Development Program, are they still here? For Lawson has thanked them already, but thank them again, because this demonstrates again the need for the solidarity of civil society, especially in these challenging times. So we want to really thank them for making it possible for us to have this annual lecture here in Durban. And as Lawson said, it is the first time, hopefully not the last time. And then I want to thank all of you for coming and spending some time with us. I hope that you found this stimulating, insightful, and we hope that you'll continue to support the work of CASEC and civil society more broadly. So thank you again, and please, as Lawson said, join us for some drinks and snacks as I now formally close the what is it? Is that the Kader Asmal annual lecture is how many years is no how many years has been doing it now?
This is the 12th.
The 12th. So I want to officially close the 12th Kader Asmal lecture. Thank you very much.